Today we're going to talk about having difficult conversations, whether it's with a spouse, a friend, even someone online. Having difficult conversations seems to be everywhere these days. But what if the key to handling this is not just any old way to do it? The handling conflicts is understanding what's happening in your brain. I know it seems really technical, but we've got someone who's going to break it down for us and really help us understand what's happening in those heated moments. Joining me now is Dr. Jeremy Pollack. He's a social organizational psychologist, professional mediator, and author of the new book, Wired for Peace, using 7 neuroscience-based principles to resolve conflicts. Dr. Pollack, thank you for being with us. It's a mouthful, but you're saying it's quite simple to boil down what's happening in those heated moments. So let's just start off. You say we're wired for peace, but what exactly does that look like, especially when you're having a heated argument?
Yeah, I mean, the concept essentially is sort of the foundation of wired for peace means, we are essentially wired for collaboration. We are wired for cooperation. I know it seems like a lot of times we're getting into arguments or there's, wars or there's big group conflicts, et cetera. But the truth of the matter is, if you think about the way that our brains work, we release oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, those sorts of neurochemicals when we're actually collaborating and connecting. What's happening when we're in conflict? All the other parts of the brain, sort of the inner sides of the brain, limbic brain, amygdala, et cetera, HPA axis, things that are releasing all kinds of neurochemicals that don't feel very good. So there's a lot of inner conflict when we're in outer conflict. So my argument is essentially we are wired for peace, but we tend to get hijacked by certain parts of our brain when we get into conflict because we get defensive. And if we can just kind of clear those away, we actually get back to our natural state, which is peace.
So you say sometimes the brain goes, quote, offline. How do we know what's happening to us in real time when your brain does go offline?
Yeah, it's hard because, so for instance, if you're experiencing a conflict, and you could just think of a conflict in your mind, what starts to happen for you? You start to maybe get a little shaky physiologically. You start to maybe get chest tight, stomach, stuff like that. You might start heart racing, that kind of thing. You also start feeling different types of feelings. And all of this feels like conflict. And it's because a certain part of the brain is active while another part of the brain isn't as active. The parts of the brain that are meant for connection and decision making and critical thinking and creative problem solving, that's all the prefrontal areas of the brain. And those start to come offline. And so when we are feeling heated or emotionally charged, it's a different whole part of the brain operating than the parts of the brain that are really effective in communication. So we have to realize we're not going to be able to solve conflicts very effectively if we are in an emotionally charged or escalated state. And so it's important to figure out how do we get our brain state that is around connection and communication to come back online to what's called upregulate and get the other areas to downregulate if our goal is to stop feeling so emotionally charged and actually have a communication, have a dialogue.
So one thing that caught my attention was what you call the 60-second brain hack. I'm assuming this is one tool to use to try to bring your brain into alignment, if you will. Tell us about what that is and how do we get to that state?
Sure. Well, can we try it? Can I try it with you, Maureen?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We're going to do 5 different things. And I know it's a lot to remember. We're going to do 5 things. And I'm going to teach you a trick to actually make this a lot easier. Okay. So number 1, I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to do a slow exhale. And as you do the exhale, the number 2 thing is we're going to relax your body. So relax your shoulders and relax your face as you exhale. And number 3 thing, now we're going to take a psychological approach. There's 2 physiological approaches, and now we're going to do a psychological. At the same time as we're breathing and exhaling, relaxing, I want you to actually say something to yourself that makes you feel reassured. Something like, I can handle this. I know what to do here. Something like that, okay? So breathing, exhaling, relaxing the body. I can handle this. I know what to do. That kind of thing. Okay, good. So now the behavioral part is when you start speaking, where you're hopefully listening, when you start speaking now, you're going to A, slow down your speech, and B, try to keep your volume or your tone at a low level. So these are the 5 things. And this is about practice. So breathing, relaxing, starting to having those cognitive reassurance, and behaviorally you're going to slow things down. All these might be hard to remember in the moment. So what I want to do is I want to create a really, really simple cue, and it's going to be something physical. So for instance, sometimes I'll say, Let's try touching your finger, your middle finger, on both sides. And you can do this down low. No one has to see it.
Okay.
And I want you to practice this, let's say 3 or 4 times a day. So you do all 5 of these things while you touch your fingers together, your thumb and your middle finger. You do that a few times throughout the day, and you start to train your body in this stimulus response. The stimulus is here, and the response is all 5 of these things. And the next time you start to recognize, oh, I'm feeling heated, but I really would like to have a more effective communication and not just blow up or shut down or withdraw, then you're going to just do your little cue, stimulus, and all 5 things. Hopefully you will condition your brain to respond in that way and calm yourself down and get that prefrontal cortex back online.
I wish I had this tool. Just last week, I had this huge blowout with my 14-year-old daughter over her phone. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is because in learning how to communicate with her, because we're usually okay, but I find that when we do argue, it goes from 0 to 1,000 really quickly. So having some of these de-escalation tools is really important. So the deep breath and just relaxing and telling myself, okay, you've got this, and doing that, I really do feel in this moment that can be something to just give me that beat, that pause that I need to react more effectively.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole thing is, again, if we're in an escalated state, if we're emotionally charged, it's probably not going to go very well in terms of just having an effective conversation. So what can we do to help us get that other part of our brain back online? And this is one trick, but there's a lot of self-regulation techniques out there that you can YouTube and stuff like that.
So when you are having a disagreement and then you're in that calm state, should you push through with the conversation, or do you just stop it altogether?
I would suggest that if you can't calm yourself down, i.e. what's called self-regulation, if you can't use some tools to regulate, it's better to take a pause and take a break from the conversation than to try to push through. Because in all likelihood, if you're trying to push through escalation and you can't regulate yourself, you're probably not going to have a very effective conversation. So I think it's very useful to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little heated in this moment. I really want to have this conversation because it's important to me, but can we just take a pause for 10 minutes and come back to it? Or can we just take a pause and come back to it in an hour? I need to process things a little bit, Just give yourself permission for that.
Is that the one mistake people do make during these conflicts, particularly with family members, is not saying, okay, just give me a moment? Or is there something else that they're doing that exacerbates the situation?
Well, I think first things first is you kind of have to be aware of how you're feeling. Yeah. So if you just automatically, like some people, like especially family members, they know how to push your buttons. Oh, yeah. And you have a pattern with them. So you just go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. And you have to, if you want to have a different pattern with someone, then you have to start recognizing, okay, the next time I do that, I have to try to stay aware of it and interrupt the pattern. And so interrupting the pattern could mean taking a pause from the conversation, or it could mean doing a cue, doing some self-regulation. But interrupting the pattern is really important. That's the first step, is just self-awareness. And then after that, it's either self-regulation or take a pause and see if you can regulate during the pause.
So something that dawned on me is with the social media playing such a big role, we email, we text, and a lot of times there's conflict that comes into the tone that you may not have came across in text the wrong way. How does that play into communicating and learning how to diffuse situations that get out of hand without maybe your intent for it to do so?
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems is communication requires not just the content of a communication is a small piece of it. So much of it is tone, expression, body language, etc. So when you take away all of those elements now become areas for assumption. And someone can interpret your content in all kinds of ways. So I would highly recommend that we do not put anything in text, whether it's email or messaging or texting, that could lead to an emotional charge. Sometimes we're not aware of what that could be, but a lot of times I would just say, try to keep it logistical, operational, very matter of fact. If there's anything that you need to communicate that is either emotionally charged for you, or you think someone else will get emotionally charged around it, or it could be interpreted, make a phone call at the very least. If not, do it in person.
Okay, I mean, it sounds, these are simple enough steps, but I know in practice it's a little more difficult. What I also wonder is, can conflict ever help strengthen a relationship?
Well, I mean, I think in my opinion, and also in my experience, conflict is the catalyst for all growth. I mean, think about it. when have you learned the biggest lessons in life? When do companies
Right.
innovate or get creative? It's because there's tension or friction or
There's a
something's not
challenge,
working.
right? Uh-huh.
Exactly. So conflict is just it creates a friction, it creates an energy, and what we do with that energy is totally up to us. We could be creative with it or we could be destructive with it. There's a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity for getting creative, for growing, for improving relationships, for optimizing processes, etc. When there's conflict, because it's a cue that tells us, hey, something is off here. There's an
Yeah.
opportunity for getting realigned. So I think absolutely, if we can look at conflict differently, we can actually respond to conflict differently. And I think that's an important piece.
Dr. Pollack, in our last few seconds here, if viewers remember just one thing from Wired for Peace, what would you want that to be?
For me, I think I look at conflict resolution in two big pieces. The first piece is care, the second piece is solution. Don't jump to solutions before you implement a sense of care for the person you're in conflict with. They need to feel that you actually care about their needs or their goals or their values, whatever the context is, before you can jump into just solving the problem. So I would just say, remember, care comes first, then get to solutions once people feel cared for.
Dr. Jeremy Pollack, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. The book is called Wired for Peace, Using 7 Neuroscience-Based Principles to Resolve Conflicts. We thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.